Hello, welcome to the third day of the Food Art Film Festival at the Jan van Eyck Academy. We've got a full program today, and without delay, I'll give the word to Inyas, and he can introduce himself, I think, a lot better.
Thank you very much, Marente. My name is Jan van Eyck Academie. I'm from Belgium. I'm a Belgian artist, and I work in a pretty wide range of materials and techniques. So some would say that I'm a multidisciplinary artist. But I think the basis of most of the works that I make is very much infused by the things that I love very much. And in this case, it's food, but it's also a love for everything that has to do with folk culture, I would say. So everything that is, in a way, made by people outside of a context of art as decoration or out of practicality, but in combination with also trying to make it look good. Okay, sorry. For instance, in the Middle Ages, in winter, when a peasant and his wife can't work on the field and they decide to work with some wood they have laying around to make something, I really love that stuff. And one of the things that come to mind in my case is the idea of cookie boards. Cookie boards, or sometimes also called gingerbread boards. Don't know how familiar you are with this. In Western Europe, it's pretty common, and most of us know it because of St. Nicholas. But there's actually a very long and interesting history before all that. And actually, it stems back from pre-Christian times. So it's funny that we know cookie boards as something Christian or St. Nicholas-like, but it was actually in the old days when people still like to do a sacrifice to their sometimes very angry god. Then they used to sacrifice live animals or edibles that would decompose, and the altar would become very messy. And it also is a little bit of a waste. So after a while, they decided to make like symbolized versions of what they wanted to sacrifice, and they would use to bake it in a very salty dough, or sometimes even or in bread, or sometimes in a type of cookie. The idea was that when the cookie hards out, that it can stay as a kind of a statue for a much longer time, and then you have this very beautiful altar with all these, let's say, sheep and a bundle of grains, but it's all made of dough, which I find very interesting and also very beautiful thought. Another thing that people don't know is that it was also used as a lover's gift, especially in the Netherlands. They had a tradition of poppen, which was you had like a male or a female cookie in the shape of a man or a woman, and you could give it to the person you were in love with as a sign of love. I think it should melt any heart, but it could also be rejected. So you would leave it at the door of the person you were interested in, and if the next day the cookie was still there, that means you get the broken heart, but also the cookie. So that's, I don't know how to see that as a win or a loss. But in the other case, then mostly the girl, but sometimes it was in the other direction too, could get this very big cookie, and the entire family could enjoy it, which is also nice. Another thing that is very related to the history of cookie boards, and what I find one of the best things, was this thing that you could see as tough love, or let's say sweet hate. They would have a lot of cookie boards in the past that were shaped in, like for instance, you would have a drunkard, or you would have a man chasing a woman, or you would have a woman that is putting a load on a man's back, like all these very stereotypical things, and you could give them to somebody you knew as a hint of, hey, friend, maybe you should drink a little less, or hey, your wife is sucking up to another guy, maybe you should keep an eye on it, or hey, maybe you shouldn't be working all the time. Like all these comments that you normally can't say, but if you do it in the shape of a cookie, I think it works very well. And then, of course, the church really hated all these things because they had this heathen background, and it was satirical, and there was a lot of blasphemy in the cookies, and so they weren't really a fan of that. So they tried to make sure that it couldn't happen again, that they couldn't make cookie boards, and especially the cookies. So, for instance, in Amsterdam in the 18th century, there was a big ban on idle cookies. But it didn't. It was like these very nice plants that you can't get rid of. It just keeps on growing. So eventually, the church didn't know what to do with it, so they tried to make it into something that's theirs, like they do with everything. So all of a sudden, instead of all these very harsh critiques or fabulous story, legend references, you got cookies from the Last Supper, Saint Nicholas. I don't know if this exists, but probably somewhere there's a Moses splitting the sea. That's a bit about the history of cookie boards. They're still around, mostly, I might say, St. Nicholas cookies. But then I got really obsessed with them. And back in medieval times, there were people specialized in making cookie boards, and they made these very intricate, beautiful boards. But after a while, this because of the ban in the Netherlands, this job died down, and you got amateurs, or like I said before, the farmer in winter, or the baker when he had some spare time, making his own boards. And these boards were a bit quirky, like a bit naive, badly drawn or badly cut. And those are the best. I mean, those really are the best. If anybody feels like I want to see them, I have 2 books underneath this table, so I can let you look at it. They're amazing. You will definitely see the difference between the very stylized, beautiful ones and then the quirky ones. And as a person that's not very good at drawing, I was like, okay, this is perfect. I don't have to be able to draw, and I can make amazing looking cookie boards. So that's what I did. I started working with cookie boards as a way of storytelling, that the story would be edible, and that in most cases it wouldn't be me telling the story, but the cookie suggesting a story, and maybe people that are eating it would know what it was about, because it's mostly based on local legends, and the cookies would be served locally, so that conversations could happen between, let's say, a local person from Ninove, and I'll get back to that, and somebody who's just visiting from Germany, and they're standing next to each other and they're eating whatever this is. I mean, it's also there, so it's no surprise then, it's the donkey. And then maybe the local person could say, oh yeah, of course, it's a donkey because, and then ta-da, storytelling happens, in the best case scenario. Then what I think is also very interesting is the use of the dough in a very smart or storytelling way. What I like, I see a few of you that I remember from the foraging walk, like I would say seconds ago, but it's already more than an hour ago. I did a few months ago the same foraging walk with Mark, and what I did is I took all the herbs that we found and I dried them and ground them, and then made them into a cookie that I hadn't tasted yet until 30 minutes ago. So it's also down here, and I'm willing to offer it to you. So maybe you can taste some of the local herbs. So local herbs would be a way to make the dough tell a story about this place. But the one that I really wanted to talk about, and this is like a super large buildup, I'm sorry for that, but the one that I really wanted to talk about was this one. And this one I designed for the city of Ninove. And they have this very interesting town legend. They're very proud of a carrot, but the story is not only about a carrot. I think a carrot is a bit lame also in the story, but there's also a donkey, and it's like the anti-hero, but also really the hero of the story. So the story goes as followed. Once there were 2 neighboring towns. The one town was Ninove, and the neighboring town, I will just name names, was Aalst. Aalst had some kind of grievance with the city of Ninove, so they sent a messenger saying, we will attack you tomorrow. Now, in the town of Ninove, they had these very big medieval gates, and they wanted to lock up all the gates so that the Aalstenaren, or the people from Aalst, couldn't get in. So when it came to closing the gates, there was the biggest gate, and they couldn't seem to find the let's say, the beam to lock the gate. So the only thing they found was a very big carrot, and they jammed it into the gate to try to lock it. As it turned out, at that night, on that same night, one of the local city donkeys broke free of its cage, and he saw this amazing looking, very big carrot. It was like everything he's ever dreamed of. Went over, ate the carrot, and in the morning, when the people from Aalst arrived, ready to slice up the enemy, the gate was open. So what did the people of Aalst do? They arrived, saw an open gate, and they got very scared because they thought either the people of Ninove are crazy and we're all gonna die, or it is a trap. So they decided to turn around and go back home. So in this case, I would say the donkey is actually the one worthy of being the symbol of Ninove and not a stupid carrot. But what I did do with this cookie is I used as a main spice for the cookie, I took out all the typical exotic things that you would expect in the basic dough of a ginger snap, and I changed it with dried carrots. So all the flavor you will taste is mostly butter, sugar, and carrots. And let's see, I have a cheating card here. Yeah, I think it's time for the cutting and tasting part already. And then after that, there's a Q&A. But if you mind, I just cut a cookie and you can come one by one. Take a piece, take a napkin, take a coffee, take a tea, take some water. Not all of them at the same time, but whatever you like. And then, just tell me whether you like it or not, or whether you have some more questions after. But first, it's time for cutting and tasting. Also, if you want to taste a local one, it's beneath here. Just let me know, and I'll pull it up and cut it too. Good? All right. I should say there's a tradition that I started also, since I like tradition so much, with always starting with the ass of the donkey. But you don't have to take from this side. It's just that's the way I do it. Yeah, cuts very well. That's lucky. So there are some small pieces, some big pieces. The side pieces are very hard. The middle pieces are a bit softer. Try some of all. I would say there's more than enough for everybody. Almost there. I've been doing it so much, but still, I'm surprised how much work it is to cut this cookie. I would say, please come. This side's already cut. If you want the face, just let me know and I cut it immediately. it's thick, it's rich. You will need coffee.
Where's the S?
Coffee in the middle of.
I like it, but you can do it either one that you like. These are the local ones. As you can see, it's in the shape of two ducks. And the two ducks, they were collaborative residents with us, and they were cleaning the garden all the time. So I decided to make a tribute to them by making them into a cookie board. So if anybody wants some of this, I'll also cut it up. Oh, it feels bad to cut the feels bad to cut the ducks.
I'll cut off the head like that.
Of course.
Oh my god.
How else would I do it?
I cut off the... No, you're hungry now.
You can do it. You can do it. Please, and don't force me to say all my weird stuff in the microphone. Yep. So these are the local ones. Please feel free to take a piece.
Sorry, when did you bake this big one?
This one I had baked. Oh, that's true. I had to say this. It's very important. It was baked in the bakery Mathieu Hermans. Very good bakery here in Maastricht, and they've been helping me out with all my bigger cookie projects because you need a very big oven for it. Yeah, so it was. I think it was baked yesterday morning or yesterday at noon, and I picked it up this morning. This one is freshly baked this morning.
And are cookie boards always this size? Or
No, that's the tricky part. That's where I really try to make my personal touch by making it very big and by making this, which you could see as a half 2D, 3D, like a sort of edible sculpture thing. And I wanted it to be very big so it could be shared in a very democratic way so that everybody could get a piece of one and the same thing. I think there was a very nice philosophy behind it also. That I'm not going to literally say, but I guess you. But it makes it difficult if you work very big, of course. So you have to sometimes work with local bakers for their oven, but also for their expertise. For instance, how do you get the middle part at least baked and not raw without burning the sides? Yeah, I mean, it's you use a very special oven. It's called a hot water oven, and it's an oven that circulates between every shelf of the oven hot water so that it's equally hot everywhere in the oven. But it's pretty specific oven type, so you need
Vapor?
no. It's no. If you would use vapor, then the dough would stay wet and it would sag out. No, it's like a heating system. Like the very hot water runs through the pipes and the pipes heat up and they stay warm. People still waiting for the local cookie? Then sorry for not cutting.
You use baking powder or yeast? Was it baking powder or yeast that you use or nothing like that? There's some air inside.
Yeah, this one is self-raising bakmeel, so I don't know how we would. Yeah, it's already mixed, but in this one it's just normal flour, and I put some baking powder inside, but really, really low amount. That's why this one is, I think, a little less fluffy, but still it's pretty damn fluffy, I would say.
And so how the whole process looks like? You take a dough, you get it into the mold, and then you flip it and then you bake it, or it's like how the shape remains like after cooking.
Here, please take some more cookies. It's exactly as you said. You make your dough, you roll it in the plank, you flip it, and you just keep on knocking on the wood until the dough comes out. Normally, the consistency of the dough is good enough so that it stays together and that you have this entire picture coming out at one time. And then you can bake it, of course, without the wood. Some people already asked me before also if the wood with the dough goes into the oven. But then I think you lose your plate after a while because it starts deteriorating, burning on the surface, and yeah. So, like you said,
Maybe you use butter in the plate to make it drop out? Or?
yes. Normally you could use butter or just use flour, but what I always do is, because I like the patina of it, is I first rub my plates with sunflower oil, and then it just releases very easily. I see people are still looking down also. There is the cookie board of the ducks, so you can see the detail. I can take it out. Here. Pass it around. Oh yeah. Can I put it next to it? Ah, yeah. For the people at home, these are the ducks. You can see they're in a loving embrace. They're very happy. Yes.
What story is that? Is that a story?
This one has no story, only the fact that they lived with us and they used to be with 5, and then a marten broke in and killed 3 of them, and then there were only 2 left. And I think as a community, we all very much fell in love with these ducks, which were Indian running ducks. So they had like the very long necks, and they walked a bit funny. They were very, very beautiful. So there's only some sentiment and a personal anecdote, no story behind this one. It's also a story, it's true. And then if people are still interested, here are some books. Here, oh yeah, yeah. Check it out, books about cookie boards. And they're both by the same author, which name is J.J. Schilstra. He's Dutch. And the books are amazing.
Give it up for JJ.
Give it up for JJ.
So
Should I
this
show
was even
people?
before printing of books. This is a way of sending messages by cookie. So this
Yes.
before printing books, this was happening already.
Of course, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Before the printer was invented, we would print like this. Edible prints.
Animals, yeah.
They last.
Wow.
And it's mass production. You can make out of these shapes 1,000 before they.
I haven't made enough to see any deterioration, but I mean, you can see that the boards are being handled. And I've also heard that sometimes when the wood keeps on drying, there is a crack, and then they found proof of planks that were put back together with iron wedges and stuff. So I think they can last for a very long time.
These are the quirky ones then, like
Ah,
these
okay.
these kind of things. Maybe.
Oh, it's,
Sorry, maybe show them. Oh no, they're still pro.
Yeah.
No, you will see that there is a slight change normally, but the thing with this book is it's not chronologically, it's by theme. So you will have to look for them in each team, the quirky ones. They will. Yeah, it's pretty well done, no? I mean, if you see
It's a good one.
if you see like depth and roundness, that's pretty skilled. And then this becomes a bit more quirky, for instance.
Yeah.
Can you see this one?
I think you can see it in the screen even better.
Yeah, but yeah, it's still, I mean, let me look for the most quirky one that I can find because it is so amazing.
You make us curious.
Yeah, that's a trick, huh? That's half of the cookie. Wait, I think they're in the front with the. Can you still hold it, Anne, or is it too heavy? I think they're with in the lovers lane. There are a lot of quirky ones. Yeah, let's just use this one as an example. These two.
Yeah, these two.
These two become more simplistic and more pattern-like. While you had some examples earlier, like this one, you can actually see the folds in the vests of the koningspaar. Or here you have some, like the neck is very detailed. You can see the nose is very perfect. But the more flat and simple it becomes, the better. I'm looking for the best example, but I'm probably not going to find it. But there are a few ones that you're like, what the hell is that? What is that? And it turns out it's supposed to be a pig or something. Yeah.
Are there also calendars, like, or some kind of?
What do you mean?
For example, in my house I have a calendar from Bali from the 50s with like this categorization, and I really have to think of these kinds of drawings It's like a calendar that tells you on which day to do what. Or like of the seasons or of categorizations. Like, did they use it for that too, or was it mostly decorative?
Do you mean the
Like
cookies or?
biblical stories or like?
I think the cookie tradition was very much connected to Mardi Gras, like Fat Tuesday. So it was carnival based mostly. But I think after a while it became very like St. Nicholas, Christmas-like. But the funny thing is when you start talking about these calendars, I have to think of these advent calendars where you had like these small figurative chocolates that you could eat.
Yeah.
But that's definitely not what you meant, I guess.
No, I mean like the medieval versions of that.
I don't think so, no. Not that I know of, but I mean, I'm not an expert. I'm not J.J. Schielstra.
There's a market for astrology cookie. You should make it.
Thanks for the tip. I'm going to do the astrology cookies. It's super good. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Mathieu Hermans wants to do that.
Okay, I think these are the best ideas I have heard in a while. Thank you very much. Map. And what?
Sorry, have you researched on any like old recipes? Because the butter is, as I understand, an important ingredient, but butter ruins all the when it melts. It ruins all the details, as I see, like details in these like carvings are super important. And so where are they using what they were using? Because with the gluten, it's one thing, and before when gluten flour was not like abundant as it is now, probably was different too. So have you checked the recipes, like how it looked? Or it was all just about like as long as it keeps shape, whatever, how it tastes like.
I think that's a very good question because it's something that I've been dealing with also. You have to find the perfect balance between taste and image if you also want people to eat it, of course. Then in medieval times, they also used to make something that was called, but it's on the front of that book, I think, or on this one. That was called Thai. Thai was a very tough, very sticky cookie, and you could actually not eat it raw. You had to put it in coffee or tea or something so that it would melt down, and then you could eat it to have some filling stuff. And those make perfect imprints because they're so hard and sticky. But it turns out that the process of making Thai is super intense. You need like special weird pots for it and a lot of what I would consider very exotic ingredients. So that's why I didn't pursue that way. I tried to make something like with meaning, but also tasty enough for people to fill themselves up and come back to it and then be like, wow, can you make your heroin cookie again? And I'm like, yeah, sure. 50 euros, please.
The story I heard about the Thai cookie is also that you give it to a woman who's not getting married very young, because it's a cookie that you cannot eat right away, but also when you leave it out in the open, the moisture will go in it, and over time it will become edible, which I guess is some kind of a metaphor.
Thank you, Arvid. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you. Oh yeah, those are the funny willies. This one is very, very amusing. This is in one of the knights with a pig on his head. No.
The other way.
Quart.
Yeah.
Oh, look at the weird one. Look at the one on the left. Look at his funny clothes. Yeah, I think those are the best. It's good that somebody found them because I really love them. Yeah.
And then is the speculaas tradition different, or is it similar to these? Because they also make speculaas, right, with the molds and so on.
I think speculaas is one of the options of a kind of dough that keeps the shape well and it can get baked on the same thing. But like I also said before, most of the recipes that I use are kind of based on ginger snaps and gingerbread, with gingerbread being speculaas. But I'm not a big fan personally of using all these very exotic spices in them because it tells a different. Not that I'm not a fan of speculaas, I love it, but it tells a different story, I would say. So that's why I try to keep them out. Yeah. So I also noted which herbs that are in this cookie. If anybody cares, I'm going to say them out loud. A funny thing is, I could choose from each herb which common English name to use, and I always pick the funniest one. So there is Hondsdraf, which name is Creeping Charlie. Then you have Kleefkruid, which name is Sticky Willy. True story. Then you have Lieve Vrouwe Bedstro, and some people probably saw that today. Or no, we saw family of it, but we didn't see the Lieve Vrouwe Bedstro itself, which is just yellow bedstraw. And then there's also Smeerwortel inside, which is known as comfrey, also no funny name. But all of these, I've been looking it up, have very good medicinal value in a balm or in a tea. In a cookie, I don't know. Let's see what happens. Cool, I see that I still have 10 minutes to go. So please stay and ask questions. And if you don't want, just enjoy your coffee. And
What about this little car you have? What about this little car you have? Where did that idea come from?
nice. I'm super happy that somebody noticed this cart that I built myself, with the assistance of some experts, of course. I built this cart with the idea, the first time that I did a huge cookie, it was actually the donkey. And I wanted to present it in Ninove. And what I always like is that art. Okay. What I always like is that art is not confined to the art space, but that it can also move on the borders of where art and daily life happen. So I wanted my presentation or my pedestal to be in the shape of a cart, so I could, during the exhibition, roll it out and share it with the people in the streets, for which I have a lot of love, of course, but also because I think that's also a good place to get involved with things that I kind of take from daily life, even though it's a bit older now, but then bring it back into daily life too. So that's why I have this thing on wheels, and I have this bell to make myself heard and be like, hey, friends, Cookie Man is coming. And then they can rush to my cart and get free cookies. So that's why the cart is there. I'm also very inspired by the Netherlands.
It's beautiful.
You mean the orange color?
Well, no, I mean the baldachins that they always have. I mean, this was supposed to just refer to the carrot also, but it's also very, very Dutch in a way. Yeah. Cool.
What about the wisdom cookies the Chinese make? You have them here in Europe too. Like you open the cookie,
Yeah.
and there's a message especially for you.
Yeah, the fortune cookies, right?
Oh yeah, wisdom.
Yeah.
I thought it's fortune. Yes.
Yeah, fortune cookies. I think they're amazing. I mean, I don't think they taste good, but I think I think the concept is very, very nice. A friend of mine recently told that he was hiking through Georgia, Georgia, and there are all these cabins where you can stay, and an evening meal is prepared for you. And he got as a dessert a cake, and he was eating it, and he was like, "Wow, there's something hard in my mouth," and he took it out. It was a folded up baking paper with a poem about the mountains inside. Oh. And I thought, wow, that's so beautiful. So there's a lot of possibilities still.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have this bean inside, and if you have that one, you have to give something to other people that are present for free.
I think that's the Driekoningenvlaai. Yeah. Yeah, that's also a very big tradition in France, I heard. Marie, are you still here somewhere? I'm here. It's something with an almond or a bean, right? The cake that's, if you...
It's a ceramic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a totally different tradition.
But it's amazing. Come and tell it. Please, I still have 5 minutes. Do it for me.
In France, we have this tradition of baking a special cake for the Three Kings holiday. And it's it's a normal pastry dough, like a tart dough, but twice, so that it envelopes some sort of marzipan inside. It's like an almond paste thing. And the goal is that you have something hard inside for someone to find, and the person who finds this will be the king or the queen. And it started off with like beans or nuts, like something that will not dissolve in the cooking, but that is also not toxic to put in the cake.
Destroy your teeth.
Or destroy your teeth. Well, you have to be careful eating it, that's it. And now it's like small ceramic figurines that you can collect. And they, of course, there's a lot that are Christian related because, of course, used to be a pagan tradition and it's been taken over. And yeah, so they also tell stories with those figurines because you can collect them and then they form together or something. And how do you start with the cake? You have to put the youngest person under the table. And the person who cuts the cake points to one piece and says, "Who is this for?" Wow. And the person under the table will nominate people. So you are sure that there's no trickery in who gets which part. Yes.
Thank you, Marie. That's such a good story. So that was the storytelling part. Thank you. No, I just also want to eat a piece of cookie now and get some coffee. So if you don't mind, let's wrap it up. And if anybody still has some, I mean, this sounds weird, but questions that they don't want to ask on air, please come to me, and I'll be right here. Cool. Thank you all for watching, and good luck to the rest of the people who are doing the fafting. Thank you, Marinte, for the help. Thank you, Hamid. Thank you, Anne, for holding the book for me. And thank you to my girlfriend, Tulin, for carrying all this stuff up with me. Thank you, Bakkere, Mathieu Hermans, for baking the cookie. Yeah, just thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for visiting. Thank you.
Hello, welcome everybody here in the studio and online for the last online presentation, this time by Susana Bernhard and Philip Coleman. I think I'll just give you the microphone to explain a little bit about yourself and about your work.
Do we have to do the whole presentation in the microphone? Just to know? Yes, please. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Susana Bernhard. I'm born and raised in Amsterdam. I'm based there too, and soon to be here at the Jan van Eyck. This is Philip Coleman. We spent 2 months together in the Swiss Alps doing research on the environment and its influences on our diet and the foods we eat. And for me, this environment is really a new environment. Seasonality has a big influence on the way people prepare themselves, the way animals eat and move around in the landscape. And one of the first things I learned was that spring started late this year. So there was a stress that the grass could not be cut because it was not full enough, and there was the whole cycle of pasture growth was pushed forward. And that means that the preparations for winter are also pushed forward. So the animals could go out later. Maybe you can say something about that.
So, yeah, I'm Philip, and I'm originally from Austria, but I studied in the Netherlands. And the last 3 years, I spent my summers primarily in the Swiss or Austrian Alps. And that was also the beginning of where my practice is situated between or around food and body hygiene. And that's how I started to work with food, smell and taste to redefine our sense for existence to a place. And that's where I started to get a really strong interest in alpine dairy farming. And that's what I did for a full season, like 3 years ago. And that's where, for example, I learned, or one of the things that maybe is nice to try first is the different in like you have the animals that are on the meadow, and during the summer they graze on fresh grass. And then you have the lower pastures that are being cut to become food for the animals in winter. And depending on what the animals eat, what type of grasses and what type of altitude, it changes the consistency and the property of the milk. And we have here two different cuts. That the first one and the second cut of grass. This is the second one. And you can, both of them are by now just smelling, yeah. I mean, you can also try it, but you can eat it. But as we know, we cannot digest grass yet. But what is very interesting, if you look a bit closer, you recognize that the one has a lot of grassy stems. And this is the first cut. And the second cut consists of a lot of leaves. There's a lot of clover in it, and there's a lot of sorrel in it. And this in Austria they call it empt. And often empt is being used as a kind of candy for the animals because they love it, because it has a lot of protein, it's very sweet. Yeah.
I can say also about something about grass and the influence it has on the milk the animals produce and the products that you make from them. Because last year I made a project that was turned completely around the color of the cheese during different seasons of the year. I found out that the Netherlands, Dutch cheesemakers have been introducing colorants like from South America to color the cheese like slightly orangey. And that is because in fresh grass there's a carotene, and this carotene comes up during the fermentation process of the cheese, so turning it slightly yellow. And in the winter, when cows eat dry grass like this cut, the carotene is not so strong anymore, so it's not as yellow as in summer. So to create an even product with the illusion of lush summer cheese, they started introducing color. And I found archival materials from 1604, where they were already writing down coloring butter and cheese red or orange. Rebecca was another artist who was working with us, and she was working with natural dyes. And she heard that even the sheepskin was different colors in the year by the grass that they eat. So maybe you want to bring it back to the Alps?
Yeah, let's bring it back to the Alps by adding a little thing to the two different types of grasses we have. It not only has an impact on the nutritional value of the milk, but it also has an impact of the microbiological ecology of the milk. And that's why the second one with the little leaves that you just smelled is really interesting, because it has a lot of clover. And clover, the family of clover, that is usually in agriculture, it's used to pull or to give nitrogen back to the ground. But it's also a very common nesting spot of one type of bacteria that is called the Freudenreichie. And you might know it through flavor and taste that you know from Edamer cheese or Emmentaler cheese. So the big holes and the nutty flavor often comes from this type of microbe. And what's happening right now in the Alps is that there is a decrease of clover species happening because of partly of climate change, but also of overgrazing and the different not native type of animals that are grazing there. And the consequence it has that this bacterium is kind of also disappearing with the clover. So, and it's not something that they add, because yeah, like in most of the by now cheeses that are being made, like lab-grown cultures are being used. And I think that's maybe a good step to how we started all of this. That what you see here, what we're gonna try in a bit, is that we just wanted to observe. We wanted to observe the raw milk ecology, because what we just said before, that the cows or the animals are ingesting not only nutrients from the grasses and the pastures, but they're also ingesting several different types of microbes like fungi and bacteria. And this then later on also ends in the milk.
Yeah, and why we were interested in it is because we had direct access to fresh raw milk, both from cow and goat. And we spent also a few days on the Alp learning about Birgit. What's her? She's a herder, right? That's how you call
or
her.
She's a sen. I don't know. Maybe you know the term sen. It's like that's the name of the profession if you make cheese in the Alps.
Yeah.
That's a sen.
Yeah.
I don't. Sometimes in English you say dairy man or dairy woman. I hope by now, but back then it was still dairy man.
Yeah.
But
yeah, she told us also a lot about like these grasslands and then having this access to this raw milk made us really curious about what would happen if you would just let it stand and see how the cultures develop by themselves. Because I was researching cheese making because I did last year this project with cheese, but I used also like added cultures, industrial cultures. And I was inspired by this story of a milkmaid who just left a bucket of milk overnight in the field. And then it started to create its own new transformation and it tasted good. So I have been going up the Alp like every week. It's like a 2-hour walk up where I got fresh milk. And during this time, I also had like, the time to think about food, traveling, distance, accessibility, like completely opposite of like having constant availability in the supermarket, even 24 hours a day. All the seasons, like they don't really matter so much. I mean, you can get all the veggies all the time of the year. So while I was walking up, I was thinking a lot about this seasonality and dependence of an environment. And then we found a way we just let the environment influence our product or the thing we want to make with it. So we moved it around different places in the house, like warmer ones and colder ones. And we found good conditions in the earth cellar, where beside the transformation that we wanted, all types of mold started growing. Maybe you want to say something about mold?
Yeah, because that's like part of why during that time in the Alps it was the only place where we could do that, because there you have all these conditions that allow you to do these things, and we recognize that already. If you bring all that products, all these things that are highly alive, you bring them from there, within a few days everything changes. Like the flavor changes, the color changes, the mold changes, because suddenly. And what was really stunning was that just in the cellar there, we could observe how just the wood that was dipped in milk, suddenly a mold that was smelling like the camembert that everybody knows, was growing on the wood. Or on goat milk, suddenly red rind mold would grow, that you usually know from traditional mountain cheese, the red rind. And then on the cow milk, it would not grow. So there was just the conditions of humidity and temperature were just ideal. And that also made you realize why these type of crafts or these type of products, they originate from these environments.
Yeah, and what you're smelling now, sorry, I went a bit fast, but I was excited to let you smell it. It's in the white bowl there was a red culture growing, but it sort of we lost it coming here. So in a week we lost it because the conditions changed. And the one that's growing there, we gained it. So actually, one was lost and one was gained. And this was the more brie one, but really fresh, and you just, smell it.
And like these subtle, or these notions of recognizing when these things like slip out of your control is also something that if you learn the craft of an artisanal alpine dairyman or woman, that's like I always call it like the sixth sense of a Zen, because you navigate throughout the whole process of cheese making from the beginning of milking the animals. You navigate with your like you can the best you can rely on your nose and on your mouth. And the person that I was able to learn a lot of things from was like a person that would just stick his finger in and taste it and would know if the milking machine was cleaned well the day before. And if not, yeah, then the day was over. But like you would also throughout the process, you would sense just by feeling the steam and the density like in your environment, you would sense the temperature of the milk, you would sense when you would have to go to the next step. And this is something that in industrial cheese making gets really lost. You gain the productivity, you gain the control, but you lose this sensitivity for the product.
Yeah, and I think like we in this research was also that really came up that drinking fresh milk, that it's really like a 20th century phenomenon, because being up there at the Alps, that's also like why on many Alps or distant places it was transformed into products that could have a longer lifetime through fermentation rather than drinking the fresh milk. And yeah, through mass production and industrialization, as you said, it really became possible. And refrigeration, it became possible to drink fresh milk. But normally the milk wants to turn into something else, like the microbes want to become longer.
Yeah. It's just not made for being consumed fresh, except of young, like offsprings, because it is meant to kickstart the ecosystem of your internal and also partly external microbiome, and that's what milk is like got invented. Yeah.
So while experimenting with different milk transformations, we were hanging them after they transformed, so you could see the whey and the curds separating. So the whey, that's usually what looks like this yellowish stuff, and the curds, they look like thicker lumps. Today this week, we also, through the movement from different environments, the curds were slightly more runny. So it means that the whey coming out is less transparent and a bit more milky. But we made anyway a hang up. So we hanged it in a cloth to let out the juice and because by dehydrating, you also create a longer livity, because and the liquid stimulates also other bacterial growth. So yeah, what you see here is the clumsiness of the kitchen asked us to produce our own tools, because all the pots and things we were using, they were not the right shape. All the time they were either hanging too low, or it was just too big, or they were hanging in their own juice. And then we're thinking, okay, what kind of shape do we need? And at this time we were already collecting sticks and things to hang from. So we designed the objects around the sticks. We let the stick guide us. Let's see. And yeah, I mean, this is the baby goat that we're gonna try. Yeah, so the whey is also used to color and to seal the object. So maybe it's also nice maybe to let this smell go around.
Just, does everybody know what whey? Yeah. Because sometimes it's like. Yeah, I was. Yeah.
We're up too far now. Yeah. Thanks.
I think I can.
But what with the whey, like the interesting thing is, and that's also how these objects kind of got created, depending on like its like the function and how you need to use it. And a bit the similar thing is like with raw milk cheese making. You try to make use of everything within the cycle of the process, from the fresh milk until the end when the cheese is made. And the whey has a very important role, it being the cleaning agent of all the tools. And because all the tools originally were made of wood, and between the wood and whey, or between wood and milk, there is a symbiosis happening. And what happens is, on the one hand, that the wood inhabits the bacterial cultures that are necessary for making cheese, especially for the acidification. That's also what happens in the first stage of when we talk about the curd, like the natural acidification from the bacteria in the milk, untreated, they start to split the proteins from the water. And then with the whey, at the end of the cheese process, you clean all the wooden tools. And this is how you, on the one hand, you maintain this ecosystem of bacteria and fungi that, if taken care of, and if again and again always exposed to the same type of cleanser in that role, it's the whey, you make sure that the right bacteria cultures survive in the wood and protect the wood from being invaded by harmful ones.
And maybe it's good to say shortly something that is raw and eating at own risk.
Yeah, it's like some people might have troubles with their stomach when eating raw milk products, or if someone is also now it's also something that is not recommended. Raw milk cheese, maybe someone knows, for pregnancy, or someone that has a very weak immune system. They also say it's like, it.
Can we ask questions?
Yeah,
but,
please, yeah.
But isn't it for industrial use that now it is not allowed anymore, raw milk? Because I know that Stilton, for instance, had big problems with that.
Yeah, there is. I mean, the raw milk thing, it's, especially with raw milk cheeses, it's a big thing. But according to food safety of the European Union, raw milk cheese is officially not allowed to be sold in supermarkets. But there are kind of little backdoors that especially cheese artisans, use to justify making raw milk cheese in order to maintain cultural heritage in form of flavor and scent. And this is something that, for example, in the European Union, in the last, since they introduced, I think it was 15 years ago, these very strict, that brought a lot of cheese makeries on the edge. But they managed to carve in these sideways. But for example, in Switzerland, it's even more difficult to introduce really, for example, wooden tools, because one of the most common things that is now forbidden is the usage of wooden tools. Everything has to be from plastic or from steel, because those two materials you can sterilize very easily with chemical cleansers. And that's what happened then, was that some cheeseries, they started using chlorine cleaners and wooden tools. And this was the worst that kind of could happen, because what you did then, you destroyed this biofilm from partly centuries of wooden tools that are being used for cheese making. You destroyed this ecosystem on these wooden tools, just superficially. So the wood suddenly became like a plastic sponge. And everybody knows in the kitchen or in the household, one of the most diverse microbiological environments you can have is like the plastic sponge of when you do the dishes. And this is then what happened. So, and this is the moment when they then analyzed the wood suddenly, and they discovered, that it's just full of possible pathogens, and that's when they forbid it, because it cannot be used in combination with the standardized cleaning procedures. And that's why and that's in Austria, that's where I learned to produce a alpine, like mountain cheese, with like an environment where everything is only being cleaned with whey, hot whey, and brushing.
Is it only restricted in the supermarkets? Like if you sell in a market, for example, are you allowed to sell raw milk cheese?
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure in France nobody cares
exactly.
about
Yeah, and that's
rules.
why that's why big supermarket chains, they have troubles distributing it because they're under this very strict hygiene umbrella. Where at little farmer markets, most of the cheesemakers, they have the possibility to sell it.
So it also depends, like in the country, whether the market culture is alive or not, basically.
Yeah, that's why. And for me, Switzerland, especially if you compare it to France or Italy, is a really good example of where in France and Italy, the access to raw milk cheese products is much easier than, for example, in Switzerland.
Maybe you want to just hold this so I can pour the new one in. And you can go for it.
Oh, we can eat.
Yeah, you can eat and look and eat.
Yeah.
So nothing is added to it. It's really only.
And this is the goat milk.
Right.
Yeah, this one is.
How long does it take? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, this is unpasteurized, or this is raw goat milk from Switzerland, like where we stayed near the Italian and Austrian border.
How long does it take to?
Yeah, it depends really on the
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah.
So we were also experimenting with place and environment within the house.
Yeah.
So, for example, if we left it more in the living room, it went quicker than in the basement. But the flavors and also other, so in the living room and it went quicker because thank you. But it also attracted other bacteria, right? Like in the living room area. And finally, we chose to, and there was also a difference between the cow and the goat. We chose to work only with the basement area because it was more stable, the end result. And it takes about a week.
Oh.
So a week and then a day of hanging. And then the longer you hang it,
fast.
it says hang like 24 hours.
Yeah.
The longer you hang it, the drier it gets. And even like some cultures dry it out completely into shards or little balls and then have it in the winter, put it in their soup to make it thicker, or just have it as a starter culture in case they lose their starter culture.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I know my mom used to do it like for 2 weeks in the living room, actually.
Yeah.
So you're used to the smell also of.
Yeah, and what we do is so basically in a bowl or something with a cloth over it, and then somewhere in the living room, and then you take it and you use it. In fact, like a soup or something like that. We eat it like that with honey or with something on it. Yeah, it's amazing. But hanging like this, this is great actually. It's very beautiful.
One of the oldest Swiss kind of cheese products. It's called Schap Ziger, and it's like also from goat cheese, but it's like a little. It's very hard. It looks a bit like a pyramid, and it's from the 14th century, I think, if I'm right. And this also was dried. Like, because it was just one of the easiest and accessible forms of conserving the milk.
Maybe just to,
go ahead.
because we have more to taste. And so when we hang the milk, you get the whey. And then again, if you let the whey stand, this is what you get. So it's a whey drink, and it's also a bit inspired by a whey-based drink like Rivella. Maybe you've had it. You want to try? Yeah, it's super fresh. And yeah, that's also like this interest like of cycles, seasonality, preserving, and thinking about waste products and lines. Yeah. Yeah, it's just we started investigating of how to use this whey, and this whey, by letting it stand, it becomes fizzy and carbonated and super fresh and refreshing. But also the whey used back into the body of the clay helps it to seal. Like Philip told before, the tools of the traditional cheese makers were cleaned with whey, and. In this household, we were living together with a group of people. So besides doing this, we're baking bread. So whey disappeared in the bread. We're making kombucha with wild herbs that were gathered on walks and from the garden. So at some point, you know, the kombucha was really close to the whey, and the kombucha ended up in the whey. So we have a whey kombucha. I don't know, it's somewhere here. Yeah, that one is here. We're gonna taste it also in a little bit. Then you can taste the difference of the pure whey juice and this, the role of the mother of the SCOBY influencing the. And we didn't add any sugar, anything to it. So maybe that's while I'm preparing this one, you can talk a bit about.
Yeah, it's a bit fizzy, huh?
Yeah, it becomes carbonated by itself.
Yeah. This is now 3 weeks almost.
No, this is the new one. So this comes from the last cheese. We've been also, so what's also maybe nice to say is that this milk is also being used by cheesemakery in the village. And what they do weekly or a couple of times a week after they made cheese, they pasteurize it, and then they put the whey outside for people to give it to their animals, to mostly pigs. But if we were early enough, we could get it before it went to the pigs or a part of it. And we were also experimenting with that. But finally, this one is based on really what came out of this. So it's two weeks. Yeah.
And maybe interesting to know is like in that region, traditionally they keep cows, goats, and also sheep on the Alp, but they only gain milk from the cows and from the goats. And usually they have a type of animals that are suitable for that specific alpine landscape. Where in a lot of other alpine regions they introduced cows that come from more lowlands. So what then started to happen is not only that they started to cause a lot of erosion on the landscape, because on the one hand these animals, and with it the culture around dairying, is responsible for the alpine landscapes that we know as we know them. So there is a lot of interest in maintaining these cultures, but very little interest in modernizing these crafts to also that they become more interesting for upcoming generations. But that's a different topic. But what also started to happen is that you keep back the growth of plants that would turn the alpine landscape in forest by having these animals there. And a lot of these new types of cows, for example, species of cows, they're very picky with the food they eat and they like. So they like the very sweet, fleshy, second cut grasses, but they don't necessarily like the bit more scrubby bushes. And if you don't eat those away, then the meadows start bit by bit becoming more of again forest. And for this, you have, for example, goats, and goats are not as picky as cows, and they also like to eat juniper, and they also like to eat little trees that start to grow. Otherwise, the farmer has to take them out by himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was also, for me, really, I thought I came to a really rough and untouched landscape, but I learned like how much actually it's cultured by the animals and the relation of human and animal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the kombucha. I'm really curious what you think of it.
Can you tell us the difference
Yeah, this one is, I thought, really interesting.
Kombucha, yeah, it's based on a mother culture named the SCOBY, and the SCOBY is a symbiosis between
Yeast and
yeast and lactic acid
or
bacteria.
acidic bacteria.
Yeah. And the whey is used as a base. Normally you add sugar, but we just use the sugars that were present in the whey, or we didn't add anything.
The lactose.
You want a glass?
Yeah. This one I like a lot.
Just that one.
But yeah, because I haven't tried this one since a while. But is it also fizzy still?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. And this tastes a bit more like vinegar if you have a bit, like it has a bit more this acidity that you feel also a bit in your...
Did everybody get?
So that's where you can notice quite well that the acidity comes from lactic acid bacteria, and this one comes from acetic bacteria. And then usually the carbon dioxide comes from the yeast. And so that means there is also a slight amount of alcohol in it.
I think it tastes quite tropical when I first tasted it. We made another experiment, but maybe we don't have time for that. Maybe we should go to the...
Yeah, how are we in the time? Do we have 20 minutes left?
Oh. Want to do the...
Yeah, we have one, because maybe you know that yeasts, like in the natural environment, they love to nest on fruits or plants where they know that sooner or later there is going to be sugars for them to turn into alcohol. So we used to kind of engage a more yeast-dominant fermentation process. We used unripe plums to have less of the acidity but have more of the carbon, like of the sparkles. So if you want to try this, you can try.
I can I can walk past and just hold up your glass, or if you want, or you need another glass. I don't know.
And then.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there we go. So yeah, if anybody has questions in between, you're also welcome to ask. The earth cellar, or the
yeah, we can.
Maybe that's a good. Yeah.
So this one is a little bit more sweet.
It might also be salty. I have to taste it myself again.
I tried it this morning and I'm still fine. So you should.
Yeah, so we always try to label everything. Sometimes it slipped. Let me taste it.
Yeah. Not goaty, huh? Yeah. But yeah.
You wanna?
So we. I still think you taste the plum really well. But yeah, so because we tried to engage with all these ecosystems that are present within the process of raw milk to cheese. And so we were allowing the milk to just do what it wants to do without interfering with that, except of changing environmental conditions. And then the last stage of where the cheese is ending up is the cellar. And the cellar is a really important part in aging, especially when it comes to hard cheeses, because hard cheeses usually they are bigger in dimension. And the reason for this is also that you want to store them longer. They have a lower water content that's also necessary to store it longer compared to soft cheeses like Camembert or blue mold cheeses. And when we talk about the cellar, we also talk about the fact that in a cellar, in an earth cellar especially, you have a very specialized ecology of bacteria and fungi. And they gave birth to Roquefort, but they also gave birth to Camembert throughout the history. And that's why we put this little baby into the ground, filled with cultured butter.
A year ago, huh?
Yeah.
Or more than a year
Or
ago,
now
you
it's,
did.
Now it's, it was in June 2020, last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a bit confused of all these times. But so it has been, the butter has been cultured with, again, it's unpasteurized cream and then soured over a few days. And then whisked into butter. And then wrapped in a cheesecloth.
Yeah, maybe it's nice to, I don't know if you can see, but when we pulled this out of the ground a few weeks ago, we were documenting it, and I was really amazed by the colors that were on the surface of the cheese. It's quite a collection of different things happening. Yeah, I'm really curious how it smells also. Yeah, maybe.
It's like, this is like in the, on the British Isles, they call it bog butter. And it's like a way of how milk has been, like one of the oldest ways. They found bog butters in the swamps of Ireland that are partly 6,000 years old, where families have just been hiding barrels of butter because it was a commodity for them.
Yeah, exactly. So it was actually a treasure.
Yeah. And now one of these oldest butter founds they had was still eatable. So it's a different question if it's palatable, but it's, and as you can see, like in the center, that's why I sliced it once open. It's really,
It's yellow.
it's like, it's butter. So we're gonna slice it another time, and then if you want, you can try it.
Oh wow, it really smells like ground, I think. No,
Yeah.
I think for me it really, you smell soil.
Yeah, and
It's quite amazing.
what you, by putting it in the ground, you're not, like, first is you put it in a very stable environment of temperature and humidity, but you also engage in the soil active microbes and fungi to get into the product.
Yeah, so from the cycles of the household and the environment and pulling it in, this is ending up like pulling it out again, and really working with the environment as a base. I have not, right? Have you tasted it? Have we tasted? Have you tasted it? I haven't tasted it. Actually, I'm curious. Is it? Do we taste it? I think I can also have it raw.
That's a nice way of doing it.
Mm.
It's sour, probably.
It's very perfumey. For me, it tastes like flowers.
We use fermented butter in couscous.
Ah, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same as the one we use in couscous.
But isn't it? I think it's quite flowery.
Yeah.
It's something really.
Oh, but it's exactly the same.
perfuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Minutes.
What's the shell? Like, what is it stored in? Is that a specific wood, or could you?
Yeah, it's like, because that was last year, we were cutting a tree to repair a fence. And then, usually what you do, you take off the bark and then you throw away the bark. And then that was the moment when I thought, I want to make this barrel. And the idea was then to hide barrels on different spots of altitude, but also different ecosystems, from swampy, humid to very dry areas, to see what's the effect of the microbiological ecology in the ground on the butter. And in this case, the butter or milk products are just a very great medium to host all these very site-specific microbes. And because it becomes a product that you can experience through smell and taste, which then again becomes a great representation of the terroir. And in this case, it's like, sorry to get back to your question, but it's a spruce bark. And
Don't you have like in Pakistan, India, like ghee? Yeah. Is that the fermented butter? No.
Yeah, yeah, it's ghee. Usually, the difference to butter is that it's clarified. Yeah, so you take away the proteins of the residues, and
You let it ferment.
this. I mean, yeah,
I can ask later.
yeah, but I never heard that they ferment ghee though. No, I know it about pig fat and cow fat. They do. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, but how in general bacteria affects fat? Because usually it's like in many fermentation recipes, the fat is the thing you want to avoid, and how, like in this case, it's is it like fermenting just the protein part of the dairy? Or
No, like there's one. I mean, I didn't. I think I can't prove it that it's in there, but there is some fungi that produce lipase, and lipase is an enzyme that breaks down fats. Like you have amylase, for example, that breaks down sugars. You have protease that breaks down proteins. That's what you have with meat fermentation, but also miso and soy sauce. And with a lot of fat-heavy fermentations, you have to make sure that you have some kind of bacteria or molds that produce lipase to break down the fats again into amino acids, and that makes then the complexity of flavor. Because if you don't have that, exactly how you say, especially with cheese also, if this process is not balanced, it produces, for example, butyric acid. That's like this smell of non-parmigiano that smells a bit like vomit. But also that's the thing that can itch quite unpleasantly in your throat when you eat dairy products. So, and commonly it is present in like mycelium networks in the ground, like fungi that break down fats.
Yeah, and I think
But this is, I can't say that it's really in there. But the way it tastes, I think it's quite, like it has not a lot of off.
Yeah, I think we're pulled to the season of ending. Where I don't know, we sort of made this whole cycle round. I don't know if anyone has any last questions. We can also, yeah.
I have a question about the one with the kombucha. Normally, kombucha is ripened in tea. Did tea become a part of this process, or did you just put the SCOBY directly into the milk?
Yeah, so when I arrived there, I was starting to just first experiment with tea and different herbs. And at some point, I just left the tea out because it was not from the environment. And I wanted to see if I could work with only things that I would find directly there, either in the garden, like grown ourselves or found. So soon, that's, I think, why we were also inspired to just drop it in the way, because only with the herbs, the kombucha was doing its job. It just needs sugar, basically. And the herbs are just for flavor. So it's nothing else then. And the tea thing, I was also really holding on to it, but once I let go of it, it became really exciting. And we were every week we had 2 different types of kombucha. Like another one is there on the floor if someone wants to try it, with labkruid. Labkruid is a kraut that's also, lab is the name of the baby cow calf stomach that is used to coagulate like milk to make cheese. And some plants have the same properties, and labkruid is one of them. That is, we didn't test it, and a lot of people say yes and a lot of people say no, but we made also a kombucha with labkruid only, and yeah, that's going. So yeah.
But you're both artists. You're also an artist, Philip. Yeah. No, but I'm just wondering, how do you bridge this long-term thinking, long-term processes, craftsmanship idea? Because you're getting into a subject such as cheese making. Some people have done that for 30, 40, 50 years. And it's this constant process of making and understanding. And how do you bridge that with the idea of going from one subject to the other? Maybe it could be within dairy, it could be within.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I would love to know that how you see this sort of, because being able to make this, it requires a lot. First of
Exactly.
all, a lot of
yeah,
knowledge and a lot
yeah.
of
Yeah, that's why I also don't dare to call myself
a cheesemaker.
a cheesemaker, because
Exactly.
I have really, really deep respect for the ones that that have the sensorial capacity, but also the experience to make cheese from raw milk. Because you see that it demands this practice for many, many years.
Yeah, but what are you searching for then?
I think by following these crafts and bringing it here, or repurposing it, or bringing aspects of it, not everything, but bringing aspects of it, I think it's a really powerful tool to address things, or concepts of hygiene. Like, for example, like the way we perform cleanliness that goes beyond protecting ourselves, but became like a threat to biodiversity, became something that created a lot of walls between us and other species. And I think by talking about like these old crafts, especially related to food, you can, I hope, we manage like addressing these kind of things, these subjects.
And I think also like passing through the complete cycle of making, traveling to the origin and seeing like all the steps that are made from beginning, from raw product to a product that a consumer or yourself is using. You really become aware, or it's a way of becoming aware of this. These production chains becoming less and less transparent and more accelerated. So by stretching the time and making those steps visible, we hope to also bring this curiosity to your daily environment, and not only in the products, but also in the raw environment. Like when we were taking a walk here on the bridge, we found all these wild herbs and a fig tree, and thinking about, oh yeah, we can use this for that. And using your senses to see when milk is off or not, just tasting it, and shelf life of products, thinking about how to consume as a more empowered way by learning to use your senses.
It's also very political, because it also states that you're practicing certain skills, that we need to learn to practice these skills. Some of which we kind of don't learn from being young. I mean, you trust your fridge, I suppose, and you trust sort of the dates on your package.
Yeah.
But it's much more valuable sometimes. I feel you gain superhero skills when you understand and you know to do it yourself, in fact.
Yeah.
So that's a very political gesture, I suppose, in that sense. Okay, but it's super interesting. Yeah. And would that also mean that you extend it also into other realms or fields, like you theorize, you have text with that, you have you invite people, you create discourse around it, let's say.
Yeah.
And it taps into very many different fields, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why. Yeah. It's
which a cheesemaker wouldn't do.
Yeah, which a cheesemaker wouldn't do. Yeah. But it's always very exciting to like last year at the Vienna Design Week with a friend, we performed Way Bath, where we made cheese in Vienna with cultures that we have been collecting in Vienna, and then made cheese, and then we offered a Way Bath. And that was also like, this whole scenery was kind of absurd with all these very crafty wooden tools, and like calling it kitchen bath and relating to the kitchen environment that became extremely sterile. And again with this, like, but bringing these two environments where we perform, or where we decide upon a peaceful or destructive relationship with bacteria in our own body or our foods. But that was also a really great opportunity to talk with people about it. Why do you have all plastic cutting boards instead of wooden ones? And then some come and say, yeah, actually wooden ones, they last much longer, and so you really can kind of.
Yeah. Sorry, we need to cut it off.
Yeah.
I think Marente did the introduction. Then I thank you very, very much as being also part of the Food Art Film Festival. Thank you very much for this beautiful presentation. Thank you. So we might be able to applause for this.